Good evening and welcome to the first of several forums for candidates running for office on the November 8th ballot. This is being brought to you by Cayuga Community College and The Citizen. I'm your moderator, Guy Cosentino. On November 8th, voters across the nation will be able to go vote for a new president, but they also will get the chance to vote for members of the New York State Legislature, with 63 members of the Senate up and all 150 members of the Assembly. Cayuga County has had 3 state senators and 2 seats on the Assembly, but 2 of the Assembly seats are competitive, 2 Senate seats are competitive this year. One for the 54th Senate District to replace retiring Senator Michael F. Nizzolo, a Republican. That forum will be held next Thursday with all 3 candidates here in the studio. But this week we're bringing you the candidates for the 51st Senate District, which has been represented for the last 4 years by Senator James Seward. Senator Seward not only represented this area over the last 4 years, but for a 6-year stint in the 1980s and 1990s. The district covers parts of 9 counties, including areas south of the city of Auburn and in the southeast corner of this county of Cayuga. Today we have with us the candidates for the 51st District. They are Senator Seward, who is on the Republican, Conservative, Independent, and Reform Party lines, and his challenger, Jemaine Bagnall-Graham, who is on the Democratic and Women's Equality Party. The 51st District includes the towns of Locke, Moravia, Wasco, Niles, Sempronius, and Summer Hill. Voters in this 51st District will be able to send someone to Albany to represent them for over the next 2 years for a base salary of $79,500, though that may change with a pay commission report due after Election Day. Jeremy Boyer, the executive editor of The Citizen, is back in our studio, as he has been for, I think, at least the last 10 years, to ask the questions of the candidates. They come from him and from The Citizen. He writes a column on the editorial page of The Citizen every Thursday that you can read. Our candidates who are sitting in the order of their opening statements are Senator Seward, again on the Republican, Conservative, Independent, and Reform Party lines, and Jemaine Bagnall-Graham, who's on the Democratic and Working Equalities Party. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio, welcome to the college. We're delighted to have you here. As we did a coin toss at the beginning, we will have Senator Seward make a 2-minute opening statement, followed by Mr. Bagnall-Graham, and then we'll open it up to questions from Mr. Boyer. Welcome, Senator.
Well, thank you very much. In 1986, when I was first elected to the Senate, all of Cayuga County was in my Senate district until the 1992 redistricting. Then in 2012, I was fortunate enough to regain 6 towns here in Cayuga County. And it has been great to be back, rekindling the partnerships that I had cultivated with local officials, business owners, nonprofit agencies, and residents who call this area home. Those partnerships have produced real results. In my first term, I helped bring the Cayuga Correctional Facility to Moravia with its over 300 local jobs. In more recent years, I worked closely with school officials in Moravia, securing added funding for that school district. I successfully fought to have the Auburn City School District reclassified as a high-need district to drive more aid to Auburn. I have worked with local environmental officials to protect Owasco Lake, securing first $200,000 for the Dutch Hollow watershed project, and more recently $600,000 to get to the bottom of the algae blooms issue. I have made sure that the Fillmore Glen State Park receives state attention, delivering grant funds to help with improvements, and inviting the Parks Commissioner to visit that park to see the needs there and to understand that it is an important part of our history as well as our future. I have strong partnerships here in Cayuga County, and these partnerships help me understand the needs of those who live and work here. When I'm in Albany, I put that understanding to work and fight for what is important right here at home. I'm proud of the work that I have done. However, there is a lot more to be done. We must continue to move forward, concentrate on growth and opportunities for people. That is where my focus will be. And with that, I look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Bagnall-Graham, welcome to the studio. You have 2 minutes for an opening as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you for inviting me out to this beautiful campus. My name is Jemaine Bagnall-Graham. I am running for the New York State Senate 51st District seat. I am a veteran of the United States Army for nearly 5.5 years, 6 years. I've served active duty in Colorado, Hawaii. I've been to Kuwait for close to 4 months. And it's been an honor to serve my country honorably with transparency and integrity. I live in Sherburne. I grew up youngest of 5. I have a wife and 2 children, and we do believe in public service and the public school system. I'm running because I talk to the people in my neighborhood and throughout the district every day, and they tell me that, you know, things have gotten bad in New York State. Policy has gotten bad in Albany. The trust is not there in Albany. And we need to, I agree, we need to move forward, but we need to move in a different direction. What I propose is to move us in a direction to gap the bridge between Albany and the people in the 51st District and throughout New York State. We need to have more transparency. We need to push stronger ethics reform. We need to focus more on education for public schools. I believe I'm the person to do that, and I'm proud to represent the Democratic Party, the Women's Equality Party, and be the voice of the people for the 51st District to take on Mr. Seward. And I plan on doing that with the same values that I live with in my everyday life, which is transparency, honesty, and integrity.
Thank you, sir. You'll now be questioned over the next roughly 45-50 minutes by Mr. Boyer. He can ask questions of either of you or both of you, depending on what way he wants to go. If it's for both of you, we'll flip back and forth. So, Mr. Boyer, welcome.
All right, thank you. And the first question is for both, which I assume would start
with Mr.
Bagnall-Graham. So we're going to dive right into the ethics question and the corruption question. 2 years ago, when we were doing these forums with the candidates that were running, Sheldon Silver and Dean Skelos were the leaders of the Senate and the House, and as we all know, they've been convicted of on corruption charges since that time. There's been a lot of discussion about what more needs to be done to avoid these kinds of situations from arising more in the future. My question to both of you is, at this point, what major reforms do you think the legislature can make? Because that's what you would be having the most control over. What major reforms should the legislature make to advance and fight corruption in Albany?
Mr. Bagnall-Graham, you have 2 minutes on this subject.
All right, thank you. And corruption was one of the major reasons why I did join this race. It did upset me when we have the so-called 2 of the 3 men in a room who were convicted of corruption. My opponent, Mr. Seward, did write an open letter of support in favor of Dean Skelos, and that prompted me to run because that really did upset a lot of people, and it upset me because I believe in good government. What our legislators can do is, we can do things such as close the so-called LLC loophole, where we're taking all of this money funneled through the election process to candidates and get rid of this pay-to-play atmosphere that's going on in Albany. We can look at not taking money from industries that you're supposed to be regulating. Again, my opponent is the chair of the Senate, the insurance committee, and he's got all of this money coming in from that industry. And I think, and I'm not saying that he's corrupt, what I'm saying is that gives the impression of pay to play. And when you do that type of stuff, that really puts a cloud over the government. So I think those are steps that we can be taking. Yes, there was ethics reform that was passed, but it has to go through another process and then another process. That's not true ethics reform. That's watered down version ethics reform. I think we could be doing more with that, and we should be leveling the playing field and taking the big money out of politics and really bringing it down to where it's about the people and not the people playing or paying to play.
Thank you, sir. Senator, you have 2 minutes on this issue of ethics.
Well, thank you. You know, I consider holding public office to be a sacred public trust, and I work hard every single day to maintain that trust with the voters of this district and throughout the state. I conduct myself with the highest ethical standards, and I will continue to do that. You know, over the years I've been in the Senate, I have consistently supported tougher ethics reform in the form of new laws in the state of New York. From my first term we made steps there, and until even this year. And in terms of where we go further, I believe that we need to have the pension forfeiture constitutional amendment finally enacted. This year I voted for the first passage. I want to go back to the Capitol to vote for second passage of pension forfeiture. I believe that any government official who has been convicted of corruption should not be entitled to a taxpayer-funded pension. It's as simple as that. Also, I believe in term limits for legislative leaders and committee chairs. We in the Senate have passed in our Senate rules 8 years term limits for leaders of the legislature in the Senate and committee chairs. I believe in rotating those chairs, and I think that would avoid some of the problems that we have seen in the legislature. And I would also like to see that actually in the law rather than just the Senate rules, so that it would also apply to the state assembly. I also favor recall legislation. We've passed that in the Senate. I believe that under recall legislation, that the voters, if they are deeply disturbed about some action on the part of a statewide elected official or a member of the legislature, they would have the ability through a petition process to force a recall election and take appropriate action to replace that particular individual.
Thank you, Senator.
Just a quick follow-up for both of you. For Mr. Bagnall-Graham, what's your opinion on A, recall, and B, pension forfeiture?
I do agree with the forfeiture of pensions. I think it's terrible to continue to pay a convicted former state representative of this public money, especially under corruption. And I do agree with the recall. I don't mind that. I do believe that people should have the opportunity to recall their elected officials if they're not happy under any circumstance.
And a quick to both of you, another issue or proposal that's come up in recent years is banning all outside income for sitting legislators. How do you feel about that as a possible reform measure?
And we'll start with Senator Seward on that.
Well, I would favor limiting outside income on the part of legislators. I would not favor making the job of a state legislator a full-time position, because although I do work basically full-time as a state senator, but I have found over the years that it's very helpful as we deliberate and discuss pieces of legislation to have a variety of opinions from people who have in the legislature who have had a variety of experiences in their professional life. I think a full-time state legislature, we would lose that element of having a variety of opinions coming from a variety of experiences out there. You know, the United States Congress, our full-time prohibition against outside income, and quite frankly, in all due respect to our Congressman John Katko, who does a great job, I do not look to the U.S. Congress as a model of how to operate efficiently or get things done. I do believe with a limit on outside income, that would be a big step in the right direction. And also, I would point out, as it relates to outside income, we have changed the laws in the state over the last number of years to make sure that there is a great deal of transparency and accountability in terms of reporting the outside income, the sources, the amounts, and so the public, the press, everyone can clearly see what income is coming to a particular state legislator, and they can make a judgment in terms of whether or not that legislator is working on behalf of the people in their district or some other entity. So I think there are safeguards in place, and I'm always open to additional changes such as limiting outside income.
Mr. Bagnall-Graham, you'll have 2 minutes on this subject as well.
Thank you. I do support a ban on outside income, and I do believe that the legislator should be a full-time job. As Mr. Seward said, he's already working full-time. We should make it a formality. Let's make it full-time. Let's ban all outside income. Let's remove the temptation Yes, the people in Congress, they do work very hard, but us being in New York, we're one of the most corrupt states as far as politics is concerned, if not the most corrupt. We have to curb that behavior somehow. That's another way of looking at it, is to ban outside income and just make the position full time. Now, in saying so, I do understand that there are people out in New York City, in Buffalo, and bigger city areas who just can't survive on 79.5 and with the cost of living being that way. I do support an increase in wages to offset those costs in those biggest cities and to support people who do rely on outside income. So that way we can just focus on the people's business and not focus on how much money we're making, clients outside of the state office, or how my personal business is being run. So those things I do support.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Boyer.
All right, we're going to move on into a local issue, and a lot of people here in Cayuga County are very concerned lately about the water quality. Owasco Lake, the drinking water source for about half the population. Blue-green algae toxins have been showing up in the treated drinking water samples, not at levels yet where it's a federal or the EPA advisory, so we haven't had any stop drinking water advisories out, but there's no guarantee that won't happen. Given your position running for a state Senate seat, my question is how evaluate what the state has done so far to help with this problem that we're facing, and what additional help do you think needs to be coming?
Well,
Since Senator Seward did the, you're correct. Since Senator Seward did the outside pay issue first, Mr. Bagnall-Graham will deal with the water quality issue first.
Okay.
You have 2 minutes.
I've been keeping up with that a lot. I've been talking to some of the county legislators out here, and yes, it's true that the area has or they were given money, but it's my understanding they haven't received any money for this problem. And maybe I'm wrong, but this is the last conversation I've had with county legislators. They're still waiting on the funding for it. So I think we should really be focusing on how do we address these runoff issues? How do we preserve our water? Maybe we should look into more watershed associations to address the preservation of the water and pour more funding into that. But they do need the money, and the problem isn't going to go away unless we take care of those issues. And also maybe we need to look at policy and see what's causing these problems and really address those at the state level.
Thank you, sir. Senator, you have 2 minutes on this issue of water quality.
Certainly. I consider Owasco Lake one of our most important natural resources here in Cayuga County and throughout this region of the state, particularly because of the fact that it is the source of drinking water for close to 50,000 people in this area. And that's why when I came back to Cayuga County in terms of a senator in 2012, we immediately went to work on this issue, working with the Owasco Watershed Lake Association and other local officials to deal with this problem. As I pointed out in my opening statement, for the first time, we're seeing significant state financial resources coming into this area to deal with the Owasco Lake issues. That $200,000 for the Dutch Hollow watershed project, which will help cut down the phosphorus and nutrients flow and sediment from that watershed, and more recently $600,000 to deal with this latest issue of the harmful algae blooms that have caused such a problem in the lake and, of course, potentially in the drinking water in Auburn, Owasco, and throughout the area. I believe that it's important to get to the bottom of just what's causing this algae bloom problem. This $600,000, which was just recently released, will allow us to get to the bottom of what's causing that problem. Now, going forward, no question, we need to bring additional state support to this issue. Number one, I think we need to help the city with its water treatment plant and also the one in Owasco to make sure that they can handle, these plants can handle whatever comes out of the lake in terms of any toxic water. And also ultimately, though, we need to bring resources to the table to make sure that there are no toxics in Owasco Lake.
Thank you, Senator. Mr.
All
Boyer.
right. Just as a follow-up to this issue, you know, a lot of folks in the watershed feel strongly that there is strong evidence that agriculture is a major contributor to the water quality issues, and they're calling for more stringent regulations on agriculture. How do you feel about that as a possibility to help clean up the lake?
Something tells me that's not a quick follow-up, so we'll give 2
Yeah,
minutes.
that's
We'll give 2 minutes
absolutely.
to that. Senator Seward, you'll go first on that.
Well, it's important, as Owasco Lake is to the region, also agriculture is important to this region in terms of our economy as well. And I believe that both agriculture and good quality lake, Owasco Lake quality, can coexist. And that's my goal. Certainly as we go through the process of identifying just what is the source of the problem in Owasco Lake, we also need to work closely with the agricultural community in terms of helping them come in with best practices in terms of manure and other management practices to avoid runoff into the lake. Now that will need, I'm sure, some state resources to assist these farmers in coming up with not only changing some practices, but perhaps some facilities on the farm to better store and handle the waste on the farm so it does not end up in the lake. But this is something that we need to turn our attention to. In fact, there are already some efforts underway to do exactly that through our Cayuga County Soil and Water Conservation District and other entities through ag and markets. There are $7.5 million of water quality resources that are available to assist our farmers in coming in with those best practices and also with some infrastructure for them so that we can avoid that kind of agricultural runoff in the lake. We need to continue these efforts and step up those efforts. But I do not want to get into a situation where it's the lake versus agriculture. I think they can coexist. That's my goal.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Bagnall-Graham, on the issue of water, agriculture.
I agree with the senator. I think both are equally important. In the issue of regulations, I think regulation is it is a last resort thing to do. I do believe in finding out first and foremost what is the problem. If this is the problem, then we need to come up with solutions. Sometimes regulation is a solution, but I do agree that additional funding to assist the agricultural industry to come up with these best practices is definitely necessary to move forward.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Boyer.
All right. I'd like to ask a question about campaign finance. This is a race that's actually not atypical when it comes to the balance of campaign finance war chest. Senator, you have about $450,000 according to your most $450,000 in your campaign according to the latest filing. Mr. Bagnall-Graham has about $5,000. And my question for both of you is, is this the product of a system that is broken, and if so, what changes are needed?
Okay, Mr. Bagnall-Graham, I believe it's your turn to go first.
Okay, so you said I have about 5,000 in there, and that's about right. My 5,000, I can proudly say they've come from donations, individual donations. They've come from committees, and I did get endorsement from the Child Safe Act PAC, Protect New York Kids. None of my money has come from LLCs. None of my money has come from big donation corporations. So I'm proud of that. Yes, it is a problem. We do need to look at campaign finance reform because we want to attract the best and brightest individuals to challenge people like Mr. Seward and should not be intimidated by his $450,000 war chest. As I stated earlier, a lot of that money has come from the insurance industry. We get into a situation where we're taking money from an industry we're supposed to be regulating. That violates the people's trust when you do that, and we should be focusing on running a clean race with people's best interests in mind and not worrying about how much money we have. I personally don't look at the money issue. I think that's a media issue personally, but it does intimidate some people, and I can see why, but it has not deterred me at all, and I'm proud of the campaign that I run with the money I've raised while working a full-time job in the healthcare industry, so I will continue to do so.
Maybe I should let you answer first, but just to quickly interject, do you support public campaign financing?
I do support public campaign financing. I think we need to level the playing field a lot to take all of that pay-to-play money out of the system.
And you can fold your answer in, and
You have 3
maybe
minutes
Guy
for
can
this.
give you a
Yeah,
couple
I'm
Give him
gonna
extra
give you 3
minutes.
minutes
Yes,
for this,
I
so.
don't object to that.
Well, whether we take 3 minutes or not, who knows? But you know, I receive a broad base of support financially to my campaign from individuals throughout the district. I've had contributions of $1 this year. A gentleman sent me for my campaign, and no matter what the source of campaign contributions to my campaign committee, those are all legal. They are fully disclosed, and I do believe in transparency and accountability when it comes to campaign finances. I'm not sure what my opponent was alluding to when he talks about money from the insurance industry, which I do not regulate. They're regulated by the Department of Financial Services. We do deal with legislation dealing with the insurance industry. And before that legislation becomes law, it has to be passed by the Assembly and signed into law by the governor. I do not have full control over what happens legislatively as it relates to the insurance industry. But I make my decisions based on what is important and what is in the best interest of the people of my district. I work for the people of the district. They are my bosses, and my only bosses. I take direction from them. That's been my policy from day one. It will continue to be my policy. Now, when it comes to what we've heard here today from my opponent, he favors taxpayer-funded campaigns. That's not the answer. It's estimated that that would cost in New York State in excess of $200 million every single year. That's $200 million I'd rather spend on educating kids in our New York classrooms, in the classrooms in this area. That's $200 million I'd much rather see spent on health care or addressing the heroin epidemic. There are plenty of other places for that $200 million rather than paying for robocalls and TV ads and that type of thing in a campaign. So taxpayer-funded campaigns is not the answer. In fact, we have taxpayer-funded campaigns in the city of New York. It has not stopped corruption in the city of New York. That's hardly a model for going forward, in my estimation.
Do you feel there is any reforms that should be made to campaign finance system in New York?
I do. I believe in a greater transparency and accountability, particularly as it relates to these outside groups that spend money in political campaigns. I don't think that they should be allowed to operate without full disclosure on exactly who is behind these groups and where this money is coming from. I believe that sunshine is the best disinfectant of all. So with greater transparency on the part of some of these outside groups that spend money to impact political campaigns, I think there's more to be done there for certain.
Mr. Bagnall-Graham, you'll have a minute as well.
Okay, thank you. I think we've been moving towards this for a long time. It seems like forever. Corruption is nothing new in New York State. People are arrested in Albany all the time. They're kicked out of the legislation. But the thing is, whatever's going on, the status quo isn't working. Now, when I say campaign finance reform, there should be a cap. I'm not saying unlimited funding. I don't believe in pouring millions of dollars into television ads or advertisements or robocalls. I think there should be some type of matching program with the state, some type of limit though, as far as how much you can raise and how much is matched, and that's the reform that I'm looking at.
Well, if I could
You
just
have
comment.
1 minute, please.
The fact is, though, you can fashion it any way you want, but it's still taxpayer money being spent for political campaigns. It's estimated that that would cost, as I said earlier, over $200 million. I think that is the wrong place to put taxpayer money.
We just want to let you know that we're about halfway through our 51st Senate District Forum here at Cuyahoga Community College, sponsored by the college and the Citizen. We have both candidates running for that office. They are Senator James Seward, who is on the Republican, Conservative, Independent, and Reform lines, and Jemaine Bagnall-Graham, who's on the Democratic and Women's Equality Party. They're being asked questions by Jeremy Boyer. Mr. Boyer.
All right, thanks. We'll move into a question about public education, and a big issue continues to be Common Core standards and the related testing and teacher evaluation issues that go along with that. And right now the State Education Department is working on some changes to that whole program. I think they're maybe even trying to drop the whole word, the name Common Core, because of the connotation that it carries now. My question for both candidates, though, is based on what you're seeing right now at the State Ed Department level, is it getting fixed adequately? Are we headed in the right direction now?
And it seems so long ago, but Senator Seward, you go first on this one.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe that we are headed in the right direction when it comes to Common Core and other related education issues. I felt right from the get-go that when Common Core was brought here to New York, it was a decision by former Commissioner John King and the Board of Regents at that time that it was a rush job, that the Common Core was rolled out in a very rushed and bad way, and that we needed to push the pause button and just step back and let's do this right in terms of education policy in the state of New York. Common Core is something that was brought to New York without proper buy-in and preparation for our teachers in the classroom. Parents didn't understand it. There was no community buy-in. It was a rush job, and we said that right from the get-go. Now, with some more than some gentle nudging from the legislature, the Board of Regents and our new Commissioner of Education are working on Common Core, making major changes. We have educators working on making changes. That's where the decisions should be made by education experts that know what they're doing in this field, and I think we're moving in the right direction. One of the most disturbing speeches I ever heard as a senator was when the governor, in the State of the State message in 2015, railed against failing schools and ineffective teachers, and he had a number of harsh suggestions and recommendations for changes, which came down hard on many New York educators. I'm pleased that we've been able to roll that back, and we are now on a much better path.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Bagnall-Graham on this issue of education policy.
I think the senator and I almost agreed there. The only area we don't agree on is I don't think it's headed in the right direction. I have two children of school age, 7 and 5, in second grade and kindergarten in the public school system, and Common Core is a mess. It was rolled out terribly, and right now, the way I see Common Core, we're putting Band-Aids on it. We're not really fixing the problem. We don't know what the problem is, and we're just putting Band-Aids over an eyesore. I think Common Core should be just ripped apart, and we need to bring the educators to the table, the professionals, and let them craft something from the bottom up, and let's build on that, but not build on what we have in place.
Thank you.
Well,
You
if I
have
could
1
just
minute
comment.
to respond, please.
Yeah, I just want to say that's exactly what is happening, and we are in a situation where the governor had appointed a Common Core committee or commission to look into this issue, and thankfully now it's in the hands of our Board of Regents and our new Commissioner of Education, and they are the experts here, and they are developing education policy and curriculum for the state of New York that is in tune with what we need here in the state of New York, and not this Common Core that had been thrust upon us here in New York by a previous commissioner and Board of Regents. And so I believe that we should have education policy established by those that are in the field of education, and with proper input through public hearings and that sort of thing. And that's where we're going to end up, and I'm pleased with that. We're moving toward that in the right direction.
Thank you. Mr. Boyer.
All right, we'll move on to the SAFE Act. I still see signs scattered around when you drive around anywhere really upstate that say repeal the SAFE Act, but we're now several years into it. The gun control legislation that was approved right at the beginning of the session in, was it 2013? My question is there still a need to address the SAFE Act, or is it doing its job for both candidates?
Mr. Bagnall-Graham, you have 2 minutes on this.
Well, I think we should address it. It's still a problem with the people, and it's not going away until we do something about it. Now, my stand with the SAFE Act is I agree with a lot of people out there. It was a knee-jerk reaction. It had very little, if any, input from the upstate community, and I think it should be scrapped and started over. Does that mean get rid of it completely? Well, as it stands, yes. But let's recraft the SAFE Act. Let's, I don't know if you want to call it the SAFE Act still, but we need to have input from the upstate community, have input from the downstate community, have input from the public. We should tighten it up, though. I do believe in gun control, but let's not punish the people who are responsible gun owners. Let's look at ways of keeping the guns out of the hands of the people who shouldn't have them, whether through strict background checks, terror alerts, the mental health background, but we really should look at ways of closing loopholes and stopping people from getting guns. But I don't believe in punishing law-abiding citizens, and I don't want to take away guns from people.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Senator, you have 2 minutes on this issue of gun control.
Yeah, I was one of the 18 negative votes in the state Senate when the SAFE Act passed in January of 2013, because I felt that the SAFE Act was placing undue restrictions and burdens on the law-abiding gun owners of our state, who are not the problem when it comes to gun violence. And since that legislation was enacted into law, I have been on legislation to repeal the SAFE Act. I have never voted for any gun control law in the state of New York, and I never will, because that is the problem is not for more gun controls. The problem is in going after the criminal element and also what I would call the dangerously mentally ill. That's where we should concentrate our efforts in terms of solving the problem of gun violence. Coming down tougher on those that use firearms to commit crimes, and making sure that the dangerously mentally ill do not have access to a firearm to go out and commit some heinous crime. And so in 2015, in June of 2015, I was the Senate sponsor of legislation to make some real changes in the SAFE Act, what I would call common sense changes in the SAFE Act. We got that passed in the Senate. Unfortunately, the Assembly would not look at that legislation. So I continue to push for a full repeal of the SAFE Act. In the meantime, I've already sponsored and have passed in the Senate common sense changes to the SAFE Act. And I believe that it continues to be a real problem for law-abiding gun owners of our state.
Thank you. Mr. Boyer.
All right. Shift a little bit to economic development and specifically about the regional council model that's now governing economic development policy in New York State, with these councils competing for large pots of money. For both of you, really, what do you think of this approach as far as a model to create jobs in New York State?
Okay. Senator Seward, you go first.
Well, we have some very fine economic development programs in the state of New York. Most of the funding is channeled through the work of the regional councils. Cuyahoga County is in the central New York region, and I think that is it produced some benefits, no question, to our local economy. However, I believe in addition to some of these economic development programs that are in existence now, we need a more broad-based approach when it comes to economic development. I believe that through more broad-based approaches that would improve the business climate for all businesses in New York State, the new ones coming in and those who have been with us here in New York State over a period of time, all need to have some benefits through broad-based economic development incentives. And what I mean by those are tax relief and also regulatory relief. Let's cut red tape in New York and not jobs. And also we need to address the issue of workforce development in our state to make sure that we have a skilled workforce ready to go to work to fill the jobs of today and tomorrow. And that involves great community colleges like we have here, right here in Cuyahoga, our BOCES, our school systems, other job training opportunities we need to make available to more people in New York State. So I believe that through this broad-based approach, we can solve the problem of a sluggish upstate economy, because we are dragged down by the image, both the image and the fact, and that is that New York State continues, even with all the work we've done on tax cuts, continues to be a high-tax, over-regulated state, and the need exists for more job training.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Bagnall-Graham.
So we have all this money that's up for grabs through competition in New York State. I don't agree with it. I look out my window at home and I see, or I walk the streets in Sherburne and I see businesses closing. I've been there since 2004 and I've seen plenty of businesses close, either in Sherburne or North Norwich. So you have areas like ours who are being left out. We're not up for any of the money. It's going, I don't know how the formula works out, but, or how the competition's going, but I think it's a bad idea. We're sending the wrong message. We could be taking that money and in a sense, share the wealth with all of the counties in New York State. That's how I feel. I do agree with Senator Seward. I think we should be looking at workforce development programs and getting people to work, but and some tax breaks. But when you have corporations like Walmart coming in, and then you have a small grocery store closing because they can't compete with the Walmart, what are we doing for the small business owner? And this is the money that should be going to the small business owners saying, hey, we want to keep your doors open and keep your employees employed.
Thank you. Mr. Boyer.
All right. Think about what can a New York State Senator do to help deal with the heroin prescription drug abuse problem we see in our community and communities all over New York.
Mr. Bagnall-Graham, you have 2 minutes on the issue of heroin.
Well, what can a New York State Senator do? I'm not a New York State Senator, so I can't tell you exactly the amount of pressure that they deal with on a daily basis, because this is a big problem. One of the issues, one of the things I would look at was push for more long-term facilities, rehab facilities, push the insurance industry to loosen regulations on how they're going to pay for these long-term care facilities. We're looking at several months, maybe a year, and we shouldn't be held by red tape in supplying help to these people who really need the help. So I think pressuring, maybe pressuring isn't the right word, but talking to the governor and talking to our colleagues there and say, hey, let's tackle the issue from this perspective. Let's bring in people, hire more professionals who are trained to assist in these areas. Let's bring other people to the table. There are addicts out there who are turning to counseling or becoming counselors, and they should be brought to the table because they come with real life experiences and real life solutions. And those are the avenues we should be looking at right now.
Thank you. Senator, on this issue of heroin and opioids?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's plenty that a state senator can do, and we're already involved in doing that. Since 2014, we in the Senate have had a task force on the heroin and opioid addiction. I'm a member of that task force. I'm very active on this issue. We did some changes in the law in 2014, and another round of some pretty major changes this year along the lines of prevention by limiting the amount of opioid painkillers that are available to patients at one time, and also other measures that would prevent people from even going down that road of addiction. We are, in terms of the treatment, we have required health insurance payers to cover more treatment opportunities for individuals. Very important that people have access to treatment and have their health insurance to pay for that. I was involved in fashioning and authoring those changes in the law. And also helping more people in the recovery process once they're out in the community, or if they're doing outpatient treatment, more support for them in their recovery in the community. So there's more that we need to do. I believe that we need to actually declare war on heroin and opioid addiction. That would send a signal that we are not going to tolerate this in the state of New York. And one additional thing that I'd like to see done is see us come down tougher on those who prey on and profit from the addiction of others. These dealers, we need to get them off the street, and also the illegal drugs that they are peddling, get those off the street as well.
Sir, you have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. And I look at prevention. We use that word. What does that mean? We talk about pamphlets. We talk about outpatient procedures or going to counseling. I don't think that's enough. We're not going far enough. We're looking at a situation where synthetic drugs are hitting the streets. People are getting prescription pills and from out of state, what regulations do we have from a person in Pennsylvania coming in with a 30-day supply of pain prescription drugs and abusing them or selling them? I think we could be doing a lot more in that area, but outpatient short-term rehab is not the answer. I think we really have to focus on getting these people into the treatment centers, maybe up to a year, 6 months, whatever it takes to really address the issue and get them detoxed properly.
You have a minute, sir.
Just a follow-up comment. I'd like to say that under my plan, that individual coming across state lines and selling opioid drugs, under my plan, they would be dealt with severely by New York state law, and we would lock those people up if that's why they're coming into New York State to peddle drugs here in this state. And secondly, I would point out that we need to have professionals who know what they're doing in terms of appropriate treatment for those who are addicted, making decisions in terms of what is the appropriate treatment for an individual. I certainly did not mean to imply that people should be just doing outpatient when inpatient treatment is sufficient. I'm not qualified to make that decision. But we need to have those decisions made by professionals, and as I said earlier, because of laws that I have authored, their health insurance will be there to pay for that treatment.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Boyer.
One short question, one long?
Sure, we'll do that.
All right, so this is the short one.
Yeah, and this will be going to Senator Seward first.
All right, ride sharing, should New York State make it happen next year?
This is Uber and everything else that everybody knows about. So, okay.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm the Senate sponsor of the legislation to bring ride sharing here to New York. Because of the insurance implications, we needed to make sure that the necessary insurance was in place so that, God forbid, there was some accident when someone was in a vehicle, that they would be covered adequately in the case of an accident or any other mishap. And so we've had a problem with the Assembly on this in terms of getting anything passed there. We passed the ride-sharing legislation in the Senate in June, and I'm going to go back there and push very hard for it next year as well. What we need to do by bringing ride-sharing to upstate New York, it's important to give people this opportunity to make a few extra dollars of income, but also those visitors and others that come here, they expect to have ride sharing. It's available in so many other states. And when they come here to Auburn or Syracuse or wherever in upstate New York and they can't get ride sharing, that sends the wrong signal for us and the wrong image for our communities.
Hey, Mr. Bagnall-Graham, you'll have a minute and a half on this one.
Okay, ride sharing. I'll be honest, it's not at the top of my list, but talking to people out in the district, a lot of people are for it. They've used it. In other areas, I've never used Uber, so I really don't have an opinion either way, whether it's good or bad. My only concerns would be to make sure they're following the same rules as taxi cab drivers. We have things in place for them to regulations, I guess, and that would be my only concern, is making sure the playing field is level. I don't mind a company coming in, making some money, offering a service like Uber or Lyft. I believe competition is good, but the regulatory issues, just make sure it's fair.
Mr. Boyer, your last question.
All right, I'd like to ask about the state budget process, and specifically those last few days, it seems, every year when we do have the leaders in conference negotiating the big compromises, and then they come out, say this is our agreement and we're all going to have to vote for this in the next 24 to 48 hours, and no one gets to read it. Doesn't seem like a recipe for good government. My question is, why does this continue to happen and how do we make it stop?
And Mr. Bagnall-Graham, it's your turn to answer this question first.
Okay, so the infamous 3 men in a room. We were asked about the Constitutional Convention the other day, and I was against going into it. But then someone posed a question to me today, and he asked me if we could change the 3 men in a room tactic by going into it, would you be up for it? And when you ask me a question that way, the answer is yes. I still believe that this does lead to a lack of transparency. It could lead to corruption. it could lead to a lot of issues. I don't think everyone should have their hand in the pot, but I think it should be a process that it shouldn't be coming together at the last hour. You know, I try to follow it, and I see people are staying up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning voting on bills that they don't even know what's in there, because these 3 men in the room are crafting a budget, and you just don't have time to read it. So, and the senator is probably going to answer best to it because he's part of that budget voting process. I'm not. But I do, from the outside, I see a problem there. So that would be my take on it, is let's try to disband that 3 men in the room and have it more of an open process with some other people in the room. Maybe the minority leaders and the comptroller should be involved in this. If we don't want everybody in the room, but that's a start.
Thank you. Senator Seward, this issue of the budget, 3 men in the room.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, when it comes to budget making in the state of New York, I've seen what I would call the good, bad, and the ugly. And the last 6 years, we have had 6 consecutive on-time state budgets. We used to come here and discuss the reasons for late state budgets in the state of New York. Thankfully, the last 6 budgets have been on time, and I think that's a very positive trend, and one that I certainly would want to continue. When it comes to the budget in the state of New York, there are so many issues that are out there. They are publicly discussed. I think everyone knows what the budget issues are. And in fact, I was very pleased a number of years ago to support the use of conference committees to deal with log jams on legislation, including the budget, where these conference committees are made up of 5 senators, 5 assemblymen who meet in public sessions to discuss various aspects of the state budget and to resolve differences between the Senate and the Assembly, and of course in consultation with the governor. These 3 men in the room, they don't do the whole budget. They do meet from time to time to resolve some thorny and sticky issues that need to be discussed and some kind of compromise worked out. This, I can tell you from the Senate perspective, when our majority leader goes into those individual meetings, he knows full well what my needs are for my district, what I can favor, what I cannot favor, and we have plenty of input via that. The fact is that these 3 men in the room do not vote on the budget. The entire legislature does, and they need to come back after these meetings and report to us, and we tell the leader whether or not we can go with this or not. So I feel I have input, plenty of input in the budget process, and that's certainly, I'm going to continue that on behalf of the people of the district.
Thank you, Senator. We want to thank Jeremy Boyer for his thoughtful questions. We're now going to turn to closing statements, and as we drew at the beginning, Jemaine Bagnall-Graham will make his closing statement. He is on the Democratic Women's Equality Party lines. Sir.
Again, thank you for having me here today. It's been a pleasure. Yes, I am on the Democratic Party line. I'm on the Women's Equality Party line as well. And like any person wanting to run for public office with the intent of having the public work for them, the public office work for them again, I plan to run to represent all people with transparency, with honesty, with integrity. I feel that we deserve a lot better in New York State, and we have a great process in place, and it's November 8th. You go out and vote, and you know, people are listening to both candidates. They feel who should be the best candidate. I know what I offer. I offer a fresh perspective. I've never held public office. I've served my country honorably, and I use those as tools to show that sometimes the outside voice is what's needed in our state. As far as the budget goes, I do disagree with that. I look for more input to represent our teachers in a better way. Bad policy has been passed to tie their teachers' evaluations to student testing, and we need to undo these bad policies. And I offer my services to be the best representative to do that for the people of the 51st District. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll now hear from Senator James Seward, who's on the Republican, Conservative, Independent, and Reform Party line. Senator, you have 2 minutes for your closing.
Well, thank you very much. Over the years that I've been in office, my staff and I have worked personally with thousands of constituents in need of assistance with state government. And I have never lost sight of the reason that I first ran for senator, to serve the public and help the people who call this area home. My motto is, if it's important to you, it's important to me. And going forward, my focus will continue to be on the concerns that I hear from people every single day. The need for broad-based economic development incentives to bring new jobs here and help those businesses that are already here. School aid and other educational policies to ensure that our students and our teachers, and I'm very pleased to have the support of NYSET in this race, that they have the tools that they need to succeed in the classroom. Eliminating costly mandates on local governments and unneeded regulations on our small businesses. A help for young people and their families for affording the cost of a college education. Delivering sustained property tax relief for our homeowners. Declaring war on heroin and opioid addiction, and of course restoring the public's trust in government through ethics reforms. Now, a number of steps have already been taken in a good way on all of these issues, but there is so much more to be done. Let's shake up the status quo. The job of a state senator is very wide-ranging. You need to be a leader on community issues. You need to stand up and fight for our shared values, and it's essential to have strong partnerships with your constituents. It takes experience and it takes vision. And I think my record of service, coupled with my proposals for the future, I hope you will agree that that background meets those job requirements. And if re-elected, I'm going to continue to work for the people of this district to make sure that our needs, our views, and our values have a voice at the state capitol. Thanks for your support on November 8th.
Thank you, Senator. And to both gentlemen, thank you for joining us here at the studio. Thank you for running what is clearly by tone and action a different campaign than we're seeing nationally. And we wish you well on the campaign trail. We also thank you for running. It's never easy to run for election or re-election. And thank you to you and your families for doing this. We're going to be back on Tuesday with 2 new shows of Inside Government. We're going to have new City Manager Jeff Dygard in the studio, as well as Mayor Michael D. Quill, and then we'll have an education update from Jeff Perizzola, the Auburn Enlarged School District Superintendent. You can watch these forums on the Citizens website. They are posted almost immediately upon the end of taping during the afternoons on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and throughout the season. They also can be viewed on YouTube Live. We'll be back next Thursday with the candidates for the 54th Senate District. That is the district that is currently represented by Michael F. Nizzolio. All 3 candidates for that office will be here. They are Pam Helmling, who is on the Republican line, as well as Keenan Baldridge on the Democratic line, and Floyd Rayburn, who is on the the Reform Party line. And then in 2 weeks from today, we will have a rematch of sorts for the 126th Assembly District Forum with Assemblyman Gary D. Finch and challenger Diane Dwyer. You can send your questions or thoughts for shows, not for questions for the forums, those are all from Mr. Boyer, to cozguytho@aol.com or Inside Government, P.O. Box 839, Auburn, New York 13021. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College and the Citizen. We hope you have a good night and have a great tomorrow.